What's up? Jared Curtis makes his commitment to University of Georgia. Michigan head coach Sharon Moore is suspending himself because he didn't cheat. And Texas NIL is just ridiculous. This is the Nitro Show. We're talking college football. If you like this content, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in. What's going on, Street?
Jared Curtis, five-star quarterback out of Nashville, committed to Georgia yesterday for the second time. He was originally committed back, over a year ago. He decommitted, I think, in October, but Georgia stayed in it, narrowed it down between Georgia and Oregon, and yesterday he made his commitment to the University of Georgia.
Yeah, this is a big deal. First time in a long time since we got the number one or number two quarterback in the recruiting cycle. The biggest one last time was Justin Fields. And before that, it goes all the way back to Matt Stafford.
Yeah, it's a good get for Georgia. It kind of proves that Georgia is making the commitment in NIL that some people kind of questioned whether Georgia would be willing to do. The rumored deal for Jared Curtis is a 2-year deal. To start out, $2 million. So based on what Brooks Austin was saying, it sounds like, and of course rumored, but that it's kind of the first year it's 700, 800,000. The second year it goes up. And then after that, it's kind of renegotiate to stay after that second year. And I guess that's kind of the trend that you're seeing now with these guys. The whole Nico situation kind of exposed that these guys do have some outs in their NIL deals, but I think this having a contract limit on it, which is interesting, right?
Yeah, I really like the structure of this as a template because it makes all the sense in the world. You're there definitely 2 years. You get to get some development. You get integrated with the system, and if you go out there and have a great year, then okay, yeah. See, I did great this year. Let's talk about giving myself a raise.
Yeah, and I think it gives the player an idea of where he fits. So coming into a place like Georgia, I think Georgia is looking at Gunnar Stockton as a 2-year starter. I don't think, unless he comes out and shocks the world, I don't think Gunnar Stockton is going to be a guy that's gone after this year for Georgia. I think if he plays well, I think he's still got a lot of developing to do because he hasn't really played that much. And if we've seen anything, the Carson Beck situation, that getting more experience in college is good for these guys, and heck, the NIL money's there. So if you can make more guaranteed money staying in college, why do you risk going to the NFL draft and falling like Shedeur Sanders did? He's going to end up making a lot less money this year in the NFL than probably if he would have stayed at Colorado.
Yeah, throw Quinn Ewers in that bucket too.
Absolutely.
He probably lost the most amount of money in that decision.
Yeah. But now there is a flip side to that, right? Georgia is promising a lot of money to Jared Curtis, but that means that with the changes coming with revenue sharing and everything else, that means that there might not be as much money for other top tier prospects. Obviously, Georgia is in the hunt for Jackson Cantwell, number one overall player in the country, left tackle. It's Georgia, Miami, it seems like, are the two big programs in for him. But if Georgia's spending $2 million on a quarterback.
Yeah. So I feel like since there are no rules right now, that this is the year to just spend as much as you have. And then you'll be, I think there's going to be like some kind of grandfather period because you've already spent this money and now you've got a year or two to get under the cap, right?
Right. Well, I think part of it is the cap will be what you can revenue share, right? So a lot of these guys, only a portion of their salaries are going to come from the rev share, right? It's all going to have to go through that NIL clearinghouse. So the supplemental NIL money outside of what they're getting from the team will come in that form. It's just making sure that those NIL deals are legit and can get through the clearinghouse. That will be the next step.
I wonder what they mean by legit.
Well, I think it's fair market value is what they are saying. Of course, as Kirby said a few months ago, we don't know what that really is, but can a kid get $1 million for doing one car ad? That's not fair market value, right? It would be more along the lines of
someone was willing to pay him for it.
Right. But that's the thing. It goes back to, is an auditor going to see that, or are they going to see that as, oh, well, this is just the modern day, money in the Wendy's bag, right?
Well, I mean, IRS ain't gonna care.
True.
So, I mean, seriously, the market is whatever someone's willing to pay you. So I just feel like that clearinghouse for NIL is going to be contentious.
Yeah. In the first couple of years, I'm sure it's going to be a total mess.
Because, like I said, what is fair market value, and what is a valid NIL deal? There is no parameters for that, unless they're saying, okay, NIL truly has nothing to do with playing at the university.
Which technically that's kind of the idea.
Right. And that's what it should be.
Right. But it was never going to be that, which is why it's good that they're moving in this rev share direction. At least,
Yeah, I agree. I think if they set the parameters around that, then that makes it a little more palatable, because you're saying, okay, you're not going to get this crazy, weird outside money to come play football for this university. You're going to get paid from the university and go from there.
I think for Georgia, this kind of balances it out, right? The quarterback room that they currently have is not as expensive as a lot of what other schools are paying right now. Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Puglisi are not high NIL value guys from what everybody says.
Yeah.
So Georgia actually has a really, really cheap quarterback room coming into this season. That's going to change because you're going to have, starting next year, you're going to have a freshman on campus who's making more money than guys that have been there for 2, 3, 4 years at that point. So they're going to have to manage that, right? But what is Georgia getting in Jared Curtis? Let's take a look at him. He's 6'4". He's 225. He accounted for, I think, 56 touchdowns during his junior year. And 18 of those were rushing touchdowns, 18 or 19. So the guy, he's got some wheels. He's got a big arm. So he's drawing a lot of comparisons to Matt Stafford and a lot of comparisons to Garrett Nussmeier down at LSU.
Yeah, but if he has that extra dimension of being able to run a little more, because that's not really Stafford or Nussmeier's game.
Stafford could move a little bit.
He was a little bit.
He was a little. I would say on the ranking of a Jake Fromm to a Stetson Bennett, he's definitely above a Jake Fromm, but not quite at a Stetson Bennett, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Stafford was out there making Pat Mahomes throws before Pat Mahomes was Pat Mahomes.
Right. He was the original no-look sidearm guy.
Much Pat Mahomes could Pat Mahomes if he was Pat Mahomes.
Georgia is adjusting up to the market value, it seems. It'll be interesting to see where they go with the rest of their money. They've got some big-time recruits. And from what everybody says, all the recruiting experts, this year's class, the 2026 class, is very top-heavy. There are a lot of really, really good players, but a little bit weaker in the middle section. So what little high caliber players there are, there's going to be lots of money thrown around at these guys. So it's very good for Georgia to get one of the marquee players off the board to get their recruiting kickstart going.
Yeah. And shout out to Mike Bobo. I mean, this guy has been through the ringer with this fan base, and I don't think it's deserved that he gets the crap that he gets. He's been part of some of the best offenses at the University of Georgia. And on the recruiting front, you cannot argue with his success. He was the one that got Matthew Stafford.
He was the one who got Gunnar Stockton. He was committed to South Carolina when Bobo was there.
Aaron Murray. And those quarterbacks did pretty damn well.
Definitely a shot in the resume of Mike Bobo. Obviously, there was a lot of talk after the season that there was all those weird rumors that his health was bad and that he was retiring and, he was going to be replaced and all that. But the guy stuck to it. Yeah, he's got a 5-star recruit coming in.
It was probably Oregon spread rumors, trying to get Jared Curtis out of the running.
Though Dan Lanning, as has shown recently, he doesn't really spread rumors. He tells the truth. So
true. Yeah. But you never know. I mean, could be Phil Knight.
Right. Look,
he's like, hey, Mike Bobo's sick, right?
Right. So moving on from Georgia, and speaking about the crazy money that is exchanging hands, we talked a little bit just a few minutes ago about the shift that the schools are throwing of money around, particularly this year, because the rev share change is coming. And so starting in the last week or so, starting to be a rumor about how much money people are actually spending. Last year, it was a big deal that everybody thought Ohio State was spending like $20 million. And oh, look at that big money. Well, now
that's normal now.
Right. Now it's starting to come out that maybe there were a lot of other schools that were spending more money last year, but now we've kind of got one on record. Texas, it's rumored that they're going to be spending between $35 and $40 million on their roster this year. And if you saw what they did in recruiting, you kind of understand why.
It doesn't shock me at all. I mean, Texas is probably the richest program out there, maybe outside of Oregon, just because Oregon has the Nike connection. But I mean, Texas has all that oil money, right?
Right. And we kind of saw it coming, right? When Justice Terry, who was almost a lock for Georgia, and if it wasn't Georgia, it was going to be Auburn for years. This guy was either going to Georgia or going to Auburn. Georgia and Auburn had made good NIL offers. They felt really good. And then all of a sudden on signing day, where did he commit? Texas. And the rumor was that the offer was like 2 or 3 times what Georgia and Auburn were both offering, and their offers were about the same.
I thought he said in an interview that it was just Texas made a ridiculous offer that he couldn't refuse.
He said it was a business decision.
Yeah.
I think that was his exact words. So
yeah, I mean, can't fault a guy for that. I mean, and it's not like going to Texas is bad for your development.
No. They landed the number 1 recruiting class. Obviously, they're now in the SEC. They've got a lot of momentum. Now, there were some other people talking that saying, oh, the SEC now runs through Texas.
Not so fast, my friend.
Last time I checked, Georgia beat Texas twice last year.
How many?
Not once, but twice, and still won the conference. So Texas may be on the rise, and they may be buying players, and they've got a good program and a good head coach, but I wouldn't be so sure to say that the SEC runs through Texas just yet.
Yeah. Someone in the SEC has to take down Georgia besides Alabama.
Right. And not to say that Alabama is still not that team.
That's true. They did well on the recruiting trail, and
they lost the greatest coach ever. Give them a break for a year. I just don't think that they are gone quite yet. And obviously Georgia is just 2 years removed from back-to-back championships and still won the conference. So that's a pretty bold claim.
Yeah. I mean, people said that, Georgia had a bad year last year, but we still won the SEC.
Right. And so all this has come out this week, and, there's lots of talk about Arch Manning and how good Arch Manning is going to be. And yesterday they announced that the NFL draft in 2027 is going to be in Washington, D.C. I think actually President Trump announced it, which was interesting. But all the people, kind of the Texas people, were like, oh, Arch Manning is going to be drafted in the nation's capital and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's the 2027 draft. Last time I checked, Arch Manning is going to be eligible for the draft next year. And if Texas is good and he plays good, he doesn't have to be great. If he plays good, he's going to be a first-round pick next year. So I don't see him passing up the draft next year unless he doesn't play that well. But if he doesn't play that well this year, he's not going to be the number 1 overall pick the next year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if he hits like somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 yards and, maybe 30 something touchdowns, 30 to 40 responsible, he's number 1 draft pick.
All he has to do is just be better than Quinn Ewers was last year. And Quinn Ewers got his team to the semifinals of the playoffs.
Yeah. Yep. And Quinn Ewers didn't have,
he didn't have
impressive numbers.
Right.
He didn't have impressive numbers. I mean, Carson Beck had better numbers than Quinn Ewers.
Right. And so, like I said, I saw that and I kind of put that out there on Twitter, and man, some Texas people jumped down my throat. This was the exact quote that came back to me. The family doesn't leave college early. They know how important college reps are to long-term success and are wealthy enough not to chase bait. What? I don't care who you are. I don't care what family you're from. The chance to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft as a quarterback, nobody's going to pass that up. It doesn't matter what the family said when they came to school or when they committed there, or what Archie Manning has said. It's his grandfather. You're going to tell a kid, hey, kid, you're going to be a top 10 pick, but you're going to come back to school next year? Why would you do that to him? He's sat there for 2 years. He's been a backup for 2 years. This is his time to start. If he plays well enough, I don't see any reason he's not in the NFL after next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with that pedigree, like I said, if he just has a decent year and Texas can make it a little bit further in the playoff, maybe make it to the national title game. I don't know. If they win the SEC, that'll be a huge deal. And then they can start talking crap about the SEC running through Texas. But until that happens, it doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, right now, a lot of these people have been releasing their post-spring top 25s. Texas is the highest rated team in the SEC in every one of them I've seen. And usually they're like third or fourth, where Georgia's like eighth, seventh, eighth in most of them. So if you think that Texas is that good and Georgia, who would be their next biggest competitor, is not quite as good as them, and they win the conference and Arch Manning leads them to it and leads them in the playoffs, I don't see how he's not going in the 2026 NFL draft.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, rankings don't mean as much as they used to. So yeah, other big news, Sherrone Moore, Michigan's head coach, self-suspending himself. 2 games. And not only just 2 games. 2 games that he chose. Very winnable games, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, so it's not week 1 and week 2. It's week 3 and week 4. Week 1 in week 2, they play Oklahoma, which is arguably their biggest out-of-conference game on their schedule this year. But that's also where Sherrone Moore played football at. And they were like, oh, this is so great. This suspension will allow him to play against his to coach against his alma mater. Why? He's getting suspended for the Connor Stallion stuff that happened a couple years ago. I thought Jim Harbaugh took all the fall for that. That none of the other coaches knew anything about it. It was all Jim Harbaugh, and that's why he got suspended for 4 games. Sherrone Moore coached them while Jim Harbaugh was suspended. They went on to win the national championship. He was the coach. Your head coach was suspended. This guy coached, but then now he's suspended? And yes, I understand that they are doing self-suspension. They're trying to cut off what could come down from the NCAA, but I still thought it was weird. And so I posed the question to Josh Pate because he is the guru and connected to all this college football stuff. And I said, Michigan self-imposing this weeks 3 and 4 seems fishy. The excuse to let him coach against his school is dumb. If you are getting suspended, why is the school making special arrangements? And Josh's response was, my guess, the school believes Moore is coming, but wants him suspended for the right games on the off chance that the NCAA accepts this as final. So he said it's the off chance that they accept it as final. That seems to suggest that this might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time the NCAA just accepted a team's self-suspension of anything?
Never. I mean, well, not if your Georgia's cases where you're suspending players for autographs or selling jerseys.
Yeah, they still do their thing. It's almost like why even do it?
Right. And this is a situation where whether you agree with the rules and the stuff that they got in trouble with or not, and you say that everybody was doing it or not, the rule was pretty clearly written and you got caught. So you get caught breaking the rules, you pay the punishment. It's just like when you're speeding. Everybody speeds. Not everybody gets a speeding ticket every day. You know?
Yeah. I feel like Moore is getting is going to be taking the punishment since Jim Harbaugh left for the NFL before punishment could be doled out on him.
Yeah. That may be the case.
And it would make sense because, I mean, more filled in for Jim Harbaugh, and
right.
they won a natty.
And it's funny because when all this came up, Michigan fans were all up in arms. Oh, people are always worried about us. It wasn't cheating, all this stuff. Yeah, but you won a national championship, so why are you so mad? You got away with it. No matter what, at the end of the day, your team won a national championship. It didn't impact you. So why when people point out that, hey, this is fishy, why are you so defensive?
You got some to hide?
You got something else to hide? Yeah.
What else is going on up there in Michigan? Michigan, point to the. Yeah, that's just a weird situation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's just the whole thing is weird. It's like picking your third and fourth game to suspend yourself.
Right. And then they were like, oh, but that one game is Nebraska, and that's going to be a tough game. I'm like, yeah, it's a conference game, but I mean, Nebraska, they made a bowl game last year for the first time in 4 or 5 years, right?
I mean, yeah.
It's not like he was suspended for Ohio State or even for Oklahoma, a team that I think is actually going to be really good this fall. So
yeah. Well, if you watch Monday Night Raw, Pat McAfee made it sound like Dylan Raiola and Nebraska are back, baby.
Yeah, I did see him shouting them out in the crowd. That was pretty funny.
It was funny. I was laughing pretty hard with that.
So, moving on from scandals and money to kind of a good story, I think. This is kind of a fun one that I saw make headlines in recent days. So Clemson has a senior basketball player named Ian Schifflin. He was out of his eligibility as a college basketball player. He's a pretty good power forward, averaged like 12.5 points a game. He's 6'8", big guy. And he went to Coach Dabo Swinney and talked to him about coming to join the football team. Now, this is a guy who hasn't played football since his freshman year of high school, and he was a quarterback then, but he's a lot bigger now. And so it looks like he's going to be joining the Clemson football team as a tight end.
Wow. That's a big old white dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's an interesting thought because you've seen multi-sport athletes in college and in the pros before. And you've seen some situations where guys have been, one sport and switched over. It'll be interesting to see. I think he's only got 1 year of eligibility left. So let's make or break it, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're, on the basketball team or the football team, you've got a certain number of years to play, right? Of course. Now, they're stretching those rules with Diego Pavia and all that, but see what happens. Clemson, from what I understand.
He'll be back next year on the football team.
Probably. From what I understand, Clemson is pretty thin in experience in their tight end room. They lost what was their starting tight end last year, left for the draft. They've got a couple of freshmen, sophomores coming back, but I think the guy with the most receptions coming back has 13 career receptions. So why not? So you've got a big body guy, and hey, 6'8", playing tight end. If he's coordinated and can catch, I mean, at very least, is a red zone option, kind of like Darnell Washington was, right?
Yeah. And at least having, some football experience in his life is going to help him. And if he has a good year, I mean, there's a lot of NFL teams that will just take a flyer on a guy like that.
It's very true.
Was it like Antonio Gates? Like, he was a basketball player.
Yeah. So leading into that, I was going to ask, what are some of your favorite, two-sport athletes, particularly at the collegiate level?
Fred Gibson.
Gibson was a fun one, right?
It was fun. Funny story, at least this is a rumor, it's all allegedly happened, was the year Fred Gibson kind of had his like coming out party on the football team. He started making a lot of plays, but he was playing basketball too. And he made a comment somewhere about Fred Gibson does what Fred Gibson wants to do. And then And then Mark Richt was like, nope, you're not playing basketball anymore.
Well, so obviously I remember Fred Gibson playing on the basketball team, and the reason that was such a big deal is he played on the basketball team and he hit all those free throws to beat Florida, where Florida kept fouling him at the end because Georgia put him in the game. He hadn't really played. He'd basically been with the team for like a week. They put him in the game and Florida kept fouling him, and he had to make field goals or free throws down the stretch to win the game. But that was a bigger deal to him because Fred Gibson was originally committed to Florida. He was from Waycross, and he was friends with my freshman roommate. And so he was planning to go to Florida the whole time. He switched his commitment like on signing day and decided to come to Georgia. We had a voicemail, and it was like, "Hey, Patrick, it's Fred. I'm coming to Georgia." in our dorm room. But yeah, I totally remember that. Obviously, I was going to say, your biggest example of a two-sport athlete's Bo Jackson, right? It's got to be everybody's favorite,
And Dion.
Yeah. Bo Jackson obviously played at Auburn, won the Heisman, awesome baseball player, was an all-star in MLB and was a great running back until he got hurt. Came back around and played a little baseball there after he got a hip replacement, but was never quite the same. But that dude was awesome. And obviously another guy that we want to talk about is Herschel Walker. Herschel, obviously,
he was two sports. Yeah, track.
He was track while he was at Georgia, and obviously played football. And then, what was even cooler about Herschel was after he was in the NFL, he was on the 1994 Olympic bobsled team.
That's right.
So it's a guy who ventured over into other sports and was pretty successful. Made the U.S. bobsled team. Yeah, obviously Herschel Walker's one.
Yeah.
Another one.
I got another one for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Todd Hilton, baby.
Todd Hilton. So was a backup quarterback at Tennessee.
Yep. And Hall of Fame. First baseman?
Yep. Who did he back up at Tennessee?
Peyton Manning.
He backed up Peyton Manning? Okay.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, okay. Was he the backup before T. Martin?
I think so.
Okay. Another MLB Hall of Famer who also played at Auburn, Frank Thomas. Yeah, I looked up a little bit about Frank Thomas because obviously you knew Bo Jackson. You hear about his exploits on the baseball and football field at Auburn, but Frank Thomas, you always hear about him in baseball. But you don't really hear about him in football. So he actually went to Auburn on a football scholarship and then joined the baseball team, and he just absolutely tore it up. He only ended up playing one football season. He was a tight end. He caught 3 passes, but he got hurt during his freshman year and missed most of the rest of his freshman year. Went to the baseball team. He was so dominant that he just gave it up and stayed as a baseball player going forward.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess, Braves baseball, you got Brian Jordan as well. He played for the Braves and the Falcons.
Brian Jordan was a really, really good baseball player for a long time. He kind of gave up football to go full-time in baseball but yeah, he was a safety on the Falcons with Dion. Actually,
that's right.
Another guy who played for the Falcons, who was a two-sport athlete in college, Tony Gonzalez at Cal. He was on the basketball and the football team. And one of his things when he scored a touchdown in the NFL is he always did the dunk celebration over the goalpost until they had to ban it because somebody hung on it and broke the goalpost. Tony Gonzalez was awesome. He was a basketball player at Cal, and obviously he played tight end. And then the last guy that I want to talk about, and this one's kind of more relevant to this situation that we're talking about at Clemson, is former Duke quarterback Greg Paulus. Now, do you remember Greg Paulus?
Not really.
So Greg Paulus was a 5-star quarterback and a 5-star point guard out of high school. And so he chose to go to Duke to play basketball. And he started at Duke as a freshman. He was a starter for 3 years at Duke. And, he was another in a long line of white guy basketball players at Duke, that the fans got on, that Duke fans liked and other schools hated and caught a lot of media attention. He was probably like all freshmen his first year, but his play just kind of diminished over the years. And by the time he was a senior, he didn't even start. They had a guy come in and kind of took the job from him. So he was out of eligibility because he ended up losing his starting job by the time he was a senior. He wasn't an NBA draft prospect. But he decided that he wanted to try to go back to football after 4 years away. And so with 1 year of eligibility remaining, he went to Syracuse, and he was the starting quarterback for Syracuse for one season. It wasn't a great year. I think he had 67% completion percentage, which was decent, but he only threw for like 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Not super successful, obviously not the 5-star status that he was out of high school, but an interesting example of a guy who went back to, what he was. Will the guy at Clemson have any shot, like even to put up those type of numbers? Probably not, but it's still an interesting story, and one that, I'm going to keep an eye on this fall.
Yeah, that's a good story. So to close out with another kind of forgotten two-sport athlete at University of Georgia, Quincy Carter played baseball and football.
That's right. That's why because he originally committed to Tech out of high school and went and played in the Cubs minor league system, and then came back and came to Georgia.
Yep. Good stuff. All right. We got anything else?
I think that's it for tonight.
Awesome. Well, if you like this content, like the video, share it. Please give us a sub. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out. And we'll be back next week. I'm Burl.
And I'm Streit.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.